Hello everyone, back tuning into today's fourth video. We're doing GFS Ensembles Watch for today's fourth and final video of the day. So we're going to go through all 20 plus members of the GFS Ensembles, including the operational run, the control run, and all other ensemble members, to see what they're all showing for the next couple of weeks. So westcentral.de for this, and we're going to go through all ensemble members for you very shortly. So it's been a very busy day at Galsworthy's today. We started with the third Spring Analogues update. That's a bit of a QBO special. We also did Galsworthy's Sunny Roundup. Of course, that's your Sunday afternoon mix of this and that. And also, in addition to all of that, ECMWF Metro France and DWD Seasonal Model Update was released for January 2020 this afternoon. So it's been a very busy day and lots and lots to catch up on. If you would like to do that, both at the YouTube channel and also at galsworthys.com. So to finish it off for today, we're going to do Ensembles Watch. So we're going to begin with the operational GFS run. It's just updated in the last hour or so, so it's midday run of the GFS. We're beginning in a week's time. We're assuming, I think, that we're going to have high pressure dominating for the next 4 or 5 days, and then from around Friday onwards, that high pressure will begin to be eroded, so that by the time we get through to this time next week, Sunday, we're back into Westies. We'll see if any ensemble member is deviating from that, but it's the sort of broad idea that's within the model output at the moment. In around a week's time, we're back into low pressure and Westerly. So that's where we're picking up the story in a week's time on Sunday, 26th of January. As I say, this is the operational run of the GFS. So, got low pressure here out to west of the country. That's heading in from the Atlantic. It looks like going to give us a bit of a blow of wet and windy weather. Indeed, that's what happens as we go through to Monday, 27th of January. Low pressure's whipping itself up, and we've got gale force winds there and outbreaks of heavy rain. That gets out of the way. We're going to a colder northwesterly. That could bring wintry showers into northern and western parts of the country. It even goes a little bit northerly there as we get through to Tuesday, the 28th of January. Just a very brief little cold snap from the north. Doesn't last very long before the next low is rolling in. Here it comes on the 30th of January. Well and truly back into Atlantic domination. As we move up towards the end of the month, this is Friday 31st, we're back into a cold, showery, northwesterly type flow. I mean, into the opening days of February, just a little bit of a change, or signs of a little bit of a change. Very mild with southwest winds, but we are trying to build up a ridge of high pressure over Scandinavia, and by the time we get through to the very end of this operational run of the GFS, it does look as though we're beginning to shift into a slightly more anticyclonic type situation again. And you'll notice heights are rising to our northeast. Heights are rising to our northeast there on the 4th of February, as far as we can go with the GFS. So that's how the operational run is playing out. Let's have a look at all the other ensemble members then, starting with the GFS control run. So the control run is a higher resolution compared to all other GFS ensemble members, but a lower resolution compared to the operational run. Beginning again in a week's time, looking rather unsettled. Low pressure next Sunday coming in, excuse me, coming in from off the Atlantic. And as we move beyond that, we're going to that cold and showery northwest. That could bring some snow to northern parts of the country, but only very briefly. And then in comes the next low. It's looking very, very zonal, quite stormy actually for northern parts of the country. Then as we move towards the beginning of February, high pressure is beginning to try and ridge up from the southwest, but it looks doomed in that attempt really, as low pressure just keeps coming to the north of Scotland. That's how we finish up with the GFS control run, looking northwesterly, quite chilly with wintry showers in the north and pretty windy. Ensemble member number 1 is wet, windy and unsettled in a week's time, with southwesterly winds also very mild as we go through up towards day 10. Ensemble member number 1 turns increasingly stormy with deep areas of low pressure rattling in from off the Atlantic, and we're pretty stormy as we go into the start of February as well. Ensemble member number 1 excuse me. That's how we finish up with ensemble member number 1. So, unsettled, westerly, low pressure dominated. We're back under the cosh of the Atlantic there as we go through to the end of January into the beginning of February. Obviously, the timings of these areas of low pressure subject to change. We're talking about over a week away, between 1 to 2 weeks away. So the timings of those areas of low pressure very much subject to change. But we're looking for the broad message within the ensembles, and at the moment, so far, it does look as though it's going to be very unsettled for the end of January and the beginning of February. That's how the ensemble member number 2 is looking. So, quite mild, but also the Atlantic is breaking through. The high pressure that we're currently under is being eroded. As we move up to day 10, which is 29th of January, we go unsettled with low pressure again, continuing to be to the north. Scotland, a little bit of a ridge, trying to build to the south, but that's doomed with such an active Atlantic, and these areas of low pressure just keep coming with ensemble member number 2 right way up to the beginning of February, where we have got a little bit of a ridge building from the south, but we're still very westerly there. Ensemble member number 3, again looking wet and windy in a week's time with low pressure 1 and 2 dominating. This one's going to pull down some colder air from the north though. A little bit of a cold snap with ensemble member number 3 as winds swinging to the north for the 28th of January. It's very, very transient, and then in comes the next low to turn wind back into the west. High pressure's having a go at building up from the south, but that's not going to come to much as low pressure just keeps coming in from off the Atlantic. That's how we finish up on ensemble member number 3. Mild, wet and windy for the 4th of February. Ensemble member number 4 has high pressure declining to the south on 26th of January in a week's time. Low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. Let's see what happens with this one. So, yeah, seem to very unsettled, quite stormy weather as we move up towards day 10. Just a little bit of a cold snap there as winds swinging to the north. With that low pressure clearing away into Scandinavia and Central Europe. On the backside, we pull down those colder northerly winds. It's not going to last very long as the Atlantic is too active to allow the winds to stay into the north. So very quickly, winds back into west and southwest. Starting to build up a bit more high pressure, though, here in the opening days of February with ensemble member number 4. So that is turning us drier. Probably back to similar conditions we've got at the moment, actually. Quite cold down in the south with frost and fog. In the north, relatively mild with those southwesterly winds. No particular change from the pattern that we're currently in. Ensemble member number 5 is looking like that. Wet and windy for Sunday in a week's time. And as we move through up towards day 10, we stay unsettled. There's that little northerly snap that we might have sometime around the 28th of January. Only lasts for a day, but it could bring some snow to northern parts of the country. And then we're back into wet and windy weather again with ensemble member number 5 looking quite stormy for the opening days of February. That's how we finish up. Broadly, the pattern of winter, high pressure routed across Spain and Portugal. Low pressure is up in the northern latitudes around Greenland and Iceland, and we remain in those mild Atlantic-driven and potentially quite wet westerly winds. On top of number 6 is showery for Sunday, rather unsettled with the Atlantic breaking through. Then we turn properly wet and windy, back quite stormy there around the 27th, 28th of January. Then we go up towards day 10, just a little bit of a break in those areas of low pressure, slightly calmer then, but it's not long before the next low is pushing its way through and into extended range through the opening days of February. We go rather cold and showery with winds in from the north or from the northwest as well. All Atlantic driven stuff, the areas of low pressure very much piling in from off the Atlantic with that one. Ensemble member number 7 is looking unsettled over the weekend, coming weekend, and into the following week. This is Tuesday, 28th of January. Again, a little bit of a cold snap from the north as that low pressure clears away. Only lasts a few hours, and then winds back into the west again, and off we go into an Atlantic-driven spell through the opening days of February. So we get to the 4th of February, and this is how we finish up. Ensemble member number 7, wet, windy, and unsettled. No change in that one either. Let's try ensemble member number 8, see if that's going to do anything different. And again, Sunday next week, low pressure is breaking through. It's turning increasingly unsettled and maybe go quite stormy again as we move up towards day 10. A little bit of a cold snap possible sometime around the 28th, only for a few hours, and then in comes more low pressure from off the Atlantic, with further bouts of rain, possibly gales or severe gales in with that one as well. And we finish up with ensemble member number 8, looking like that. So just reaching the high pressure up from the south a little bit, slightly drier and calmer by the end of by the end of ensemble member number 8 on the 4th of February, but it's all still driving in from the Atlantic. Certainly no sign here so far of any high latitude blocking, no sign of high pressure at all around Greenland, Scandinavia, anywhere like that, but would deliver truly cold weather. This ensemble member number 9 looks unsettled over the weekend, and this one is just digging the jet stream a little bit further southwards. This is perhaps doing something a bit different, not quite as stormy and a little bit colder as these low pressures are digging southwards along with the jet stream. In fact, that could be a little bit of a snow event there for England and Wales on the 30th of January. Obviously, this is very different to all other ensemble members, so it is a synoptic outlier, what we would call a synoptic outlier. But it's quite a bit colder, this one. The low pressure tracking further southwards along with the jet stream. However, as we move into the beginning of February, now we're going back in line with all other ensemble members, with high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, and bringing up those mild southwesterlies for the opening days of February. That's a little bit cold with the low pressures though, and the jet stream is slightly further south in the closing days of January. It's ensemble member number 10, we're halfway through. Low pressure again is rattling in on Sunday. That could give us a wet and windy end to next weekend. There's that little northerly snap, as we go towards the 28th of January. And then that doesn't last very long though. Winds back into west and southwest up to the beginning of February. We stay unsettled with these areas of low pressure continuing to rattle through. This one's a little bit cold as well with the position of the low pressures, but we finish up on the 4th of February, again pulling up those southwesterly winds. Ensemble member number 11 has us in southwesterlies next Sunday, and probably quite unsettled as well. And this is a milder variety. So you see the placement of these low pressures slightly different from ensemble member to ensemble member. This one has the low pressures further north, more of a ridge across France and around the Alps, and so that leaves us bringing up these southwesterlies rather more compared to those colder ensemble members as we're heading up to and a little bit beyond day 10. Then we go into the beginning of February, still Atlantic driven, still driving in the areas of low pressure. That's how we finish up on the 4th of February. This time low pressure is diving southeastwards across the country, trying to get a bit of a reach building out in the North Atlantic. So that could be setting up a little bit of a cold snap there at the very end with ensemble member number 11. This ensemble member number 12, and we're actually closer to high pressure with this one next Sunday. This is the first one we've seen that keeps the high pressure hanging around for the south anyway through next weekend. I'm surprised it's taken this long to see this sort of option. So that's drier, particularly for England and Wales for next weekend. Let's see what this one is going to do. So it takes quite some time actually to move that high pressure away, and even up to day 10 the Atlantic is not breaking through with much conviction. So this one is doing something quite significantly different to anything that we've seen so far. However, it's all relatively mild. The high pressure is always centred to our south, low pressure is always centred to the northwest, which keep winds in from off the Atlantic. So that's just a slightly less unsettled, slightly less stormy ensemble member number 12, and generally quite a lot milder as well. On the ensemble graph, I suspect that will be one of the ones that's one of the milder options. This ensemble member number 13, we look quite wet and windy on Sunday next week. Low pressure is drawing in from off the Atlantic. Up to day 10, so very unsettled. Low pressure is dominating. One low is exiting away to the east coast of Scotland. Next low is out in the Atlantic, so a bit of an onslaught taking place for the closing days of January. Slight southerly track to some of those low pressures as well, so it is hinting at trying to pull off a little bit of a cold snap. In fact, we do get a bit of a cold snap there for the very end of the month. This is the 31st of January. We're looking colder and about very, very flimsy ridge, which is very quickly swept aside by low pressure heading in from off the Atlantic. That's how you finish up with ensemble member number 13, unsettled still, everything driving in from the west, high pressure centred around Spain, low pressure to the north of Scotland. So that one is Atlantic driven right the way through to the beginning of February. Ensemble member number 14 is looking like that. So again, just a little bit strong with the ridge to the south as we move up to day 10. Not quite as unsettled for southern parts of the country. Looking quite stormy in the north and generally all rather mild into the closing days of January and beginning of February. There's those southwesterlies. They'll be dragging up very mild air with them as well, and that's how we finish up. Still looking very mild with ensemble member number 14. High pressure is centred to our south. Ensemble member number 15, again looking like that, quite stormy in a week or so's time. That low pressure clears away, the next low comes in off the Atlantic, and so it goes on with more areas of low pressure returning us back to very, very stormy weather. That looks really, really stormy there around the 31st of January. That really is a proper storm battering the country. That one gets out of the way, and yes, we're back into rather cool, showery westerly winds. That's how we finish up. Everything's still driving in from off the Atlantic. I've seen absolutely no sign of any northern blocking yet with any of these ensemble members. There are slight deviations within them in terms of the timings of areas of low pressure and whether high pressure to the south is a little bit stronger and pulls up very mild air, or whether it's just generally sort of average type Atlantic weather. But they're all in agreement so far that this is very Atlantic driven period for the end of January and the beginning of February. See nothing over Greenland or Scandinavia at all. This ensemble member number 16. This one's having a bit of a go, as I say, about it building up a bit of high pressure over Scandinavia, but I think it's doomed to fail. Really, that little ridge that's trying to get going over Scandinavia, I think that's doomed to fail, as the Atlantic is just too active. But we do finish up looking like that. So the 4th of February is trying to build a ridge from the Azores high to the Scandinavian high. That's having a go at doing something different, trying to get wind into the east. I think it will be doomed to fail. But that's the first one that we've seen that's tried to get some sort of a ridge going over Scandinavia. This is ensemble member number 17. And again, looking stormy in a week or so's time. Very, very stormy, actually, there, around the 28th of January. So that's showing up quite a bit, actually. 28th of January could go really stormy, especially for northern parts of the country. And then this onslaught from the Atlantic carries on as we go into beginning of February. Let's see what's going to become of this one as it ends up. So just finishing up, bringing these low pressures in off the Atlantic. Ensemble member number 17. This is number 18. And again, low pressure is in control of the weather in a week or so's time. That low pressure clears away and the wind's swinging to the north. There's a bit of a cold snap there around the 28th, but it's showing up a little bit as well. So could be stormy around the 28th, or it could actually be rather cold. Are we going to be able to push this on? It could be stormy, or it could be rather cold with northerly winds around the 28th of January. And then we go into those southwesterlies for the beginning of February. That's a very mild opening week to February coming up if those southwesterlies pull up the air from the Canary Islands. This ensemble member number 19, penultimately, so wet and windy as we're going into Sunday next week and beyond it, and then moving in towards the beginning of February. That's how we're looking. A bit more influence from high pressure with this one. Very mild with that. High pressure centred to our south, low pressure out to the northwest, and winds are really dragging up from a mild direction in the Atlantic. A little bit more settled, that one, for early February. And then finally, for the ensemble members, this ensemble member number 20. And again, we see that unsettled conditions are beginning to take over in around a week or so's time, going quite stormy there, sometime around 28th of January, and we keep low pressures rolling in from off the Atlantic. It doesn't look like this one's going to do anything different either. Some days we get some colder sectors, some days we're in very mild sectors, but overall, everything continues to come in from off the Atlantic. The last thing we can look at is the ensemble graph, so we'll just go to there, and we'll look at Colchester as the last place that we looked at in the videos. So if you go down to temperature 850 HPA and precipitation, that's how we look, and there we go. So lots of dry weather coming up until around the 25th, 26th of January. That's high pressure domination, and then low pressure takes over for the closing days of January, and probably lasting into early February, although there's a bit of uncertainty about that. It's a very long way off, but certainly it turns more unsettled towards the closing days of January with the rainfall spikes coming back. And temperature-wise, so starting off cold with the high pressure we've got right now. Upper temperatures lift up. It may take a little while to warm the surface up, though, so probably isn't until later in the week, but it gets milder down in the south and the southeast. And then as it turns more unsettled, you see lots of up and down. It looks like there's rows of scatter within the GFS ensembles. I suspect what that is really showing is that it's very Atlantic driven, so we've got cold sectors and warm sectors alternating with one another, and that's why it looks so up and down with those lines of spaghetti. They are all bringing in either warmer sectors or colder sectors at different times, depending on the timings of the areas of low pressure. But there's absolutely nothing doing there for genuinely cold Arctic or Siberia. Well, obviously it's cold at the moment, frost and fog, and yes, certainly very seasonable feel at the moment. This is going to get milder by the weekend, though, down in the south, and much earlier than that up in the north. But from a genuinely wintry, snowy, sort of either bitter northerly or easterly perspective, with wind either coming out of the Arctic or in from Siberia, there's absolutely no sign of that whatsoever, I have to say, up until the beginning of February. So it's very mild, Atlantic driven, and very westerly winter continues, certainly for the next couple of weeks. Maybe even beyond that, we'll have to wait and see. Right, that's it for your videos for today. I might live stream Ensembles Watch next Sunday. I'm not sure if I'll do that or not, but I have thought about doing a live stream for Ensembles Watch to see how it goes. So possibly I might live stream Ensembles Watch next Sunday. That's it for all your videos for today. Tomorrow we've just got one video coming up. It's going to be a quieter day. Week to 10-day video update. That might be quite late. I've got a busy day tomorrow, so the week to 10-day video update might not be until late afternoon or early evening. We shall see, though. It could be earlier than that, but I have got quite a busy day coming up tomorrow, but only one video tomorrow. Right, that's all for now. Don't forget to check out all of today's bids. You'll be able to catch up with them tomorrow, as it's a quieter day. That's all for today's video, so that's all for now, and thanks for watching.